Here is more proof to any open-minded person that there is a huge double standard for the social/sexual behavior requirements of the genders. CBC News reported that Boston Bruins player, Milan Lucic, was fined $5,000 for taunting a hockey audience with a, quote, sexual motion, unquote. When he got fined, Milan Lucic was wearing bulky hockey gear that, unlike what most women wear 95% of the time, revealed the shape of nothing. Not the shape of his genitals nor of his ass cheeks, nada, zero. Keep this in mind as I prove the double standard here. At a public park I once watched Zumba lessons take place in front of children ranging from 6 years old to 14 years old. The most disturbing was the 14-year-old boys, since they are just developing their sexual tastes and sex drives and stuff, i.e., puberty. There is a move in Zumba called twerking, and it basically comes straight from a stripper's assortment of maneuvers. It is what you would see in a strip club or a nasty softcore porn type of music video. One would be in denial if they did not see the erotic nature of this move. What is more disturbing is that these female Zumba practitioners were wearing either leggings or the yoga tights/Lululemon pants. These black leggings are no different than if you went to the tattoo parlor and got one continuous black tattoo on your lower half and then pretended it was clothing made of fabric of some kind. Many girls don't even wear underwear underneath them anymore. They reveal every inch of every curve, every arc and curve of each buttock, every bit of the vagina gap between the thighs, every inch of buttock cleavage, and the outline of the labia, camel toe, is often visible in some leggings. You can see celluloid dimples locations through them, for God's sake. The ones who were wearing cut-off tights had them cut off at the vagina height. Not one was cut off modestly like men's shorts, which are usually cut off about an inch or two above the knee. Combine that with the twerking motions that these women are doing in front of these young boys, and then feminists blame these boys for growing up to objectify women sexually. Maybe if they did not grow up seeing music videos and Hollywood productions which are full of half-naked women trying to get the attention of men or manipulate men with their sexuality, there would not be such a problem. Maybe if they did not have to watch Zumba women shake their ass cheeks around in front of them when they were still a child, they might look at women for their minds and emotions first. Just a thought. I recall that a woman very close to me was once interviewed by a bar owner in my hometown for a job as a bartender. She was asked if she was willing to use her sexuality to sell more drinks. So nobody can claim a difference based on the fact that Milan Lucic was being paid and the audience was his customers. Then I think of the little girls in the, quote, cursing to promote feminism, unquote, feminist video. This video was created by feminists and displayed 6 to 13-year-old girls using obscene curse words as a way to bring attention to feminist causes. I remember that one of the girls was sticking her middle finger up. That gesture has always meant, quote, fuck you, unquote, and the girls actually spoke the word fuck as well. The connotations are obvious because everyone knows that fuck means to have sex, and the middle finger suggests having itself being inserted into the anus or vagina, depending on the gender. It is a sexual motion is my point. So nobody can claim that young kids being in the hockey audience is what makes the difference. Then I can mention the paid cheerleaders at some professional sports events and the maneuvers they perform. Don't go in denial and try to say they are not sexual and not meant to target the sexual appetite of straight males in the audience. These movements are overlooked because of decades of feminist brainwashing to force us to forget the sexual differences both physically and psychologically between the genders. What is not remembered when we witness these movements is that a straight man cannot be taken from behind, but a straight woman can be taken from the front or the back. Sorry to be graphic, but let me explain here. When a woman juts out and shakes around her ass in spray-painted on clothing, it is the same thing as if a man did a forward-thrusting motion with his pelvis in terms of the sexually suggestive nature of the two movements. Except, of course, that it is not socially acceptable for men to wear spray-painted on clothing everywhere and all the time, even at many workplaces, like it is for women. In the Cursing for Feminism video, one of the little girls said that men should stop telling women what to wear. Well then, will society please stop telling Milan Lucic and other men to stop doing any kind of movement with their own hand in front of their own body? I remind the listener of one of feminism's favorite statements, quote, "My body, my right," unquote. After all of the outward public displays of sexuality and erotic areas of the female body that we have to put up with in today's society, can one not see the huge double standard when a hockey player moves his hand a certain way in front of bulky, baggy hockey pants and then gets fined for it? This guy now on your screen is Matt Taylor. Matt Taylor is a British astrophysicist. He is best known for his involvement in the landing on a comet by the Rosetta mission's Fully lander, which was the first spacecraft to land on a comet nucleus. He is project scientist of the Rosetta mission. This was quite a scientific milestone and a great achievement. While giving a televised status update on the Rosetta spacecraft, Taylor wore a shirt depicting scantily clad cartoon women with firearms. The feminist groups caused such a fuss over it that he was forced to make a tearful public apology about his choice of wardrobe. So, instead of focusing on the scientific contribution that he made to society, they focused on what he was wearing on his own body. The phrase, "my body, my right," doesn't apply to men obviously. These same feminist extremists protest when a woman is merely stared at for a long time, spoken harshly to, or judged when she wears revealing clothing in public, even if it is actual lingerie. They are claiming that a woman should be free to do what she wants with her body, and so there should be no freedom of speech even allowed to verbally protest her dressing like a whore in front of children. Yet, Matt Taylor wears a shirt with merely cartoon characters dressing like whores on it instead of real women photographs, but he still receives outrage and protest against his wardrobe choice. Obviously, feminists are discrediting themselves with this level of inconsistent behavior. What they are essentially saying is that women can dress in public in a way that selfishly arouses the sex drive of men, but men are not allowed to display that arousal. This is in spite of men being born with and not choosing to have a visually stimulated sex drive like how homosexuals are claimed to be born homosexual. Feminists' actions are also sending the message that women can wear what they want in front of men, but a man is not allowed to put a representation on his own body of what women constantly shove in his face. This is total insanity that is funded with hundreds of millions of dollars per year. You should also be aware that Matt Taylor's female friend was proud of the shirt she designed for him to wear. Sexist hypocrisy exists now and has existed since there have been desktop computers at workplaces. Imagine if a man had a picture on his desktop in his office workplace. Imagine if this picture was of a woman and it was viewing her from behind as she was coming out of the water with a bikini on. Or it might just show her walking along the beach. Imagine the picture is a close-up, and it appears like you are viewing her from only a few feet away. Any women in the office would get offended by it if they saw it on his computer. This would have been the case any time over the last 25 years in most offices. They would make him remove it from his screen and complain to human resources. He would probably have to go to meet with human resources if he refused to remove it. Some women would probably say that it is sexual harassment or some sort of objectification of women. Even if he would not actually get fired today, and could now fight it in court, the fact still remains that people are hypocritical and uneducated about the truth of the matter. Fired or not, he would have a battle on his hands to keep it on his computer screen. It shouldn't even be an issue if people did not have the double standard. See, when a man is walking at the beach with his wife and he does not want to carry any images of other women's erotic areas home to the wedding bed when he makes love to his wife that night, nor does she want him to have anything to compare her to, then he does not need to be seeing bikinis in front of him. Especially if the girls aren't even swimming but just lounging around. How can the exact same outfit be innocent and for swimming or lounging around harmlessly at the beach one day and then sexually objectifying the next day at work? This man is really the one actually experiencing a form of sexual harassment, since he only wants to have sexual thoughts about his wife, and does not want other thoughts forced into his head. Yet, he is labeled as a pervert, or even a dirty old man, if he stares at the women for too many seconds. At the office the next day it is sexual clothing, and at the beach society must think that a man's sex drive shuts down because the women are outdoors or something. It is still the exact same image. You can't have it both ways. Are bikinis simply innocent swimsuits and men are, therefore, strange if they unexplainably stare at them at the beach, or are they erotic attire that causes a man to look at the women wearing them in a more sexualized way? The answer can't change because it goes from the office to the beach. Put another way, a coworker could wear her bikini in front of a man at the beach and expect him to have no reaction at all, or he will seem, quote, creepy, unquote, but at work the next day, if he has a picture of the exact same bikini she wore but worn by another girl on his desktop, he is offending her. If it was consistent, the women in the office would look at it no differently than if the man had a picture of a girl in scuba gear on his desktop. It would be just another type of swimwear. When my ex-wife put curtains up in our living room, they looked great aesthetically speaking. When we were trying to get privacy one night in the living room, the curtains did not meet in the middle, and so we had to hang a blanket over the rod instead. She did this in 2 different places that we lived in. She could not even understand my frustration, because she had gotten so caught up in the aesthetics of the curtain and how they made the window opening look, that she forgot why curtains were invented in the first place. She forgot what their original purpose was. They were intended for privacy. This was not something I was mad at her for, and later we just laughed as we had to remove the blanket from the rod when we were finished our private activity. In her defense, most women probably do the same thing since they are more concerned over aesthetics in the home than men are. It is just girls being girls. God love them. But, a more serious yet similar thing has happened with women's view of clothing today. They have so focused on how the clothes make you look that they, like with curtains, have forgotten that they were invented to cover the body's naked form the same way curtains were meant to cover the window at times. Let me show you the biggest case of schizophrenic level insanity that could ever happen to a species in any time on planet Earth. Imagine if I was standing in line at the checkout at Walmart or at the grocery store, and a girl was in front of me with spray painted on jeans. These jeans are even thicker than the leggings but will still suffice to prove my point. Imagine if I started staring at her ass and crotch areas and I did not try to hide it like everybody usually does. Instead, imagine that I purposely made it obvious to the other girls in the lineup that I was staring at her lower half. If she had a body that our culture considers to be super sexy, I would probably get other older women rolling their eyes or giving me the shame look, especially if they knew I was married. I might get a response from the woman I was staring at, something to the tune of, quote, "Why don't you just take a picture, it would last longer," unquote. Suppose my excuse and response to them was, quote, "Oh sorry, I just really like those style jeans, and I think they would look great on my wife." What kind are they? Unquote. Every single person in the lineup, male and female, would roll their eyes as they said out loud or thought to themselves, "Yeah sure buddy, likely story." But wait, how did they know I wasn't just staring at the bottom half of her clothing? They wouldn't really be able to tell from looking at my eyeballs if I was looking at the pants or the body. The answer illustrates how everybody pretends that they can't see the elephant in the living room. It is really that obvious if you just break away from the propaganda for a second. The clothing is so thin and tight that you cannot look at the clothing without simultaneously looking at the ass and crotch and vagina gap, etc. Therefore, since clothing was not invented to accentuate the erotic areas but to cover nakedness, 95% of women 95% of the time are wearing clothing that is not doing its job and is not serving its intended purpose and not performing its function. If she was wearing a pair of loose dress pants or slacks or a dress or jogging pants, and I gave the response that I was staring because I liked the flower pattern on the dress or the cut and style of the slacks, more people would probably believe me. This is because it would be possible to actually look at her clothing without simultaneously seeing her body. I am really going to explore the 2 sets of rules a little farther at this juncture. When I worked at the grocery store 17 years ago, I was forced to wear a tie. My employer felt it was some sort of respectful thing for men to wear it for the customers we served. I followed orders no problem because they were paying me to work there and so on. However, in order to make a connecting point with feminism, I need to talk about how uncomfortable and impractical it was. Do you know how much a tie got in the way of the work I tried to perform while packing groceries? It got stuck in carts, under cases of drink, or other items. It got dirty because it dipped into something. It was horrible. Not to mention how hot, sticky, and claustrophobic it made you feel, on a hot humid day when you had to physically exert yourself. Running up and down stairs with 50-pound bags of potatoes or grocery delivery orders made me feel like my tie was choking me. Here is the kicker: the girls did not have to wear this traditional piece of respectful gentlemanly attire. But, since we mentioned gentlemen, what about its counterpart, ladies? Don't ladies wear dresses traditionally? Funny how that piece of tradition was not carried over from our past culture. Women could wear pants or a dress, whatever they liked. Men were not allowed to wear a dress. This was the case in most businesses for decades, I am sure. So I had to wear a tie in order to respectfully serve the customer, but the women could serve married men with labia folds, i.e. camel toe, showing if they wanted to. Are we out of touch with reality perhaps? Not just in grocery stores but in offices there have been crazy inconsistencies that have gone unchallenged by any masculist organization for decades. There exist no masculist organizations that are well funded by the establishment. Did you ever notice that in office settings women have total freedom as to what they can wear? They can wear skirts, dresses, really weird looking super baggy pants, tight dress pants, leggings with animal fur pattern prints on them, often cheetah, or flood pants that are cut off about an inch below the knee. Throughout many decades we were told by feminists that we were living in a male-dominated patriarchy that was oppressive to women and gave men special rights. Yet, during all these decades, if a man dared to venture from anything but a pair of dress pants with pockets at the office, he would be sent home for wearing inappropriate attire. Just imagine a man's bare calves showing with flood pants in an office setting and the condemnation it would attract. It would never be tolerated. On top of that, he had to wear a tie, and the women in many companies could wear one if they wanted to as part of their attire, but did not have to. It gets worse. Men had to wear shirts with collars, fully buttoned up. But, women could choose between wearing blouses or shirts if they wished. In fact, look at the skirts women were allowed to wear to work. Some of these skirts had top parts that were basically tank tops with bare arms and shoulders showing. How much would the boss freak out at a man 15 years ago, if he showed up to an important meeting with bare arms and shoulders? If a man decided to come to work with even the top 3 buttons undone on a shirt, he might face disciplinary action. And, if he came to work with a V-neck cut down about a foot below the collarbone, everybody would laugh at him and call him Gene Simmons because he showed too much chest hair. Plus, he would have been sent home for decades of our history. Yet women came to work all the time with their V-neck showing as much cleavage as they could while maintaining plausible deniability. What is even more insane is that this happens in a culture, right or wrong, that assumes that men's chests are not private sexual areas, but that women's breasts are. So what is the public relations statement that most of the companies throughout the last 30 years have been promoting? They have been saying that showing some tit or dressing erotically is fine, but don't dare let us see even one chest hair at a meeting. This is pure insanity. Women even had the freedom for decades to wear their hair really long or really short at work or to job interviews, but somehow it was not considered oppressive to men to demand males to only have short hair for these situations. Where were the activists screaming out to ban the famous song with the lyrics, "Get a haircut, and get a real job"? You know, activists like the type that forced the Dire Straits song MTV off of public-funded radio because it had the word faggot in it. Keep in mind the songs out there that openly make fun of men with problems like premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction, and having a small penis. When I was a child you could never see pockets through any kind of pants, and they were never part of the look, design, or style of the pants. They were always just functional things kept inside and out of sight. Now, some of the white dress pants worn at offices show every detail of the rear and front pockets. Obviously, they also show every detail of underwear, especially dark-colored underwear. Then of course I still see many women today at offices wearing open-toed shoes or shoes that reveal over half of their bare feet as they do not wear socks under them. Men have not been allowed to wear this and it still would cause a fuss, if not outright chastisement, even today. If you still don't get it yet, listen to this comparison. Feminists may try to argue back that society is comfortable with men dressing like women now, and we have evolved past the things I just mentioned. Really? So it is okay for men to wear things that are just changing the skin color and revealing totally the shape of our bodies? Imagine if a man came to work in not just leggings but in something that would be the male equivalent of what women preach they should be able to wear without ridicule. Our bodies are different and nothing really sticks off on the female body like the penis does, except their breasts. Women are allowed to separately package breasts like a glove separately packages fingers, and are not forced to just squish them tightly into one mass underneath a tight shirt. They are not ridiculed even for giving them a lift. What if men wore leggings that treated the penis like a finger in a glove and had a front sleeve for it? This sleeve could even stretch a little for when the man gets semi-erect, you know, like the stretch pants girls wear in public places like church and daycare facilities. Imagine also, if under this penis sleeve there was a little round pouch there to tightly cup the scrotum like a hammock for the scrotum. You, the listener, knows goddamn well that, not only would the man be sent home from work, he would probably be charged with indecent exposure and sexual harassment. If he wore them to the shopping mall he might get bothered by mall security. If he spoke to any children he might get punched by an angry father. But nearly everybody is perfectly fine with women wearing the exact same equivalent. Why? I am all ears if the listener has another explanation other than it being, yet another, convenient exception to the rule of men being totally the same as women. It is a difference that again, conveniently, lets women do something men can't. Here is a little about the insanity of parents caused by feminism. If the parents of today lived back 400 years ago, they would have thought in the way and acted in the manner that I am going to discuss now. Let's assume today's parents lived 400 years ago in the Western world and were therefore Christian. They would believe that Mary was the mother of God in the flesh. They would believe that both she and the mother of Jesus's cousin, John the Baptist, were pregnant at 14 with their children. They would have seen nothing wrong with this. A woman's body was ready to conceive and give birth and therefore ready for sex and marriage at this age. Joseph would have impregnated Mary by then if the Holy Spirit had not already done the job. Nobody then thought of Joseph or Mary as too immature to be parents. This is what the average citizen would think if they lived back then. If today's parents had a 14-year-old daughter 400 years ago, something else very inconsistent would happen. If a 24-year-old prince, or even a duke, came to their door and asked for their daughter's hand in marriage, the fathers would not scream at him and call him a pervert nor try to fist fight him. The parents would bow down in appreciation and thank him so sincerely for choosing their daughter for marriage. They would probably start kissing his ass too, figuratively speaking. Why the different reaction for when a 24-year-old even stares too long at their 14-year-old daughter in her bikini today? Let's examine what happened here. There is a recent phenomenon of teenagers as a stage before adulthood that only really came into being 60 or 70 years ago. Before modern times the boys were sent to work as soon as they were physically strong enough to do the work. This was around 13 or 14. The girls were pregnant and married as soon as they were able to. This was around 14. I actually agree 100% with Canadian law, which says that 16 is the age for legal consent for sex. It was raised from 14 in the year 2008. This is because a girl today, due to the fact that she stays in school longer and is dependent on mom and dad longer, is not as emotionally developed nor mature as her counterpart from 400 years ago. I, therefore, agree with the laws that say 14-year-old girls are not ready emotionally in most cases for the responsibility and seriousness of having sex. An older man may indeed use his greater experience and greater emotional development and maturity to manipulate a 14-year-old girl, and she could really get hurt mentally and emotionally. But wait a second, we are not done here. The problem is that the genitals, hormone levels, pheromone levels, and body shapes of both the men and the 14-year-old girls of today have not physically evolved one iota from what they were 400 years ago. The 24-year-old penis cannot see emotional and mental development, but only can see body shapes. The 24-year-old brain, just like the prince's brain in our story, still today reacts to the smell of those young pheromones screaming out the 14-year-old's fertility. Here is the really backwards and stupid behavior that parents practice today. Back when it was acceptable to be attracted to a 14-year-old sexually if you were in your 20s or 30s, then the 14-year-olds would cover up and never reveal their bodies until after marriage. Today, when the same thing is not acceptable, they run around basically naked in front of men of all ages. If there was ever a time period when 14 and 15-year-old girls needed to dress modestly, it is now, because we have all these new rules and expectations of sexual restraint being enforced on men. The part that bugs me the most though, is that a sight which would have given the prince a heart attack or an orgasm is shown to men in public all the time. Parents today see no problem with letting their 14-year-old go to the park and climb out of the water in front of 30-year-olds while letting them see the water sucking the bikini up into her anus and vagina while the material becomes nearly see-through with wetness to the point where you can see the color pink. Then they call the older man who looks at her for too many seconds a pervert, even though they would have kissed the prince's ass. In actual fact, you parents are the immoral ones, not the heterosexual man who can't help his biological reaction to a fully functional, fully fertile, near-naked female body. You are the ones who give your stamp of approval to the leggings, jean shorts with ass cheeks hanging out, and bikinis. Do your job as parents and stop letting Miley Cyrus and Lady Gaga, MTV and Hollywood, and Big Brother and Jersey Shore raise your daughters. That way they won't grow up to be divas with a huge sense of entitlement. Feminists constantly repeat the phrase, "my body, my right." These days people are no longer allowed to call somebody a pervert or a faggot because they are attracted to the same sex. It is the consensus and the dogma of the establishment that somebody is born homosexual if they have those desires and they did not choose to be homosexual. Why can a man be called a pervert by a woman for behaving in a heterosexual way without people accusing her of being offensive or speaking hate speech? Why is it politically correct for a woman to call a man a pervert if he stares at her nearly naked body for a long time and has thoughts of sex? I say nearly naked because that is the dress code much of the time these days. The man should be able to respond to being labeled as a pervert by saying, "They are my eyeballs, it is my visually stimulated sex drive that I was born with, and my heterosexuality, so how dare you ridicule my orientation by calling me a pervert like if you called a gay man a faggot." I watched a YouTube video one time that displayed some of the double standards involved with heterosexual male arousal. In the video, two guys were watching a woman with near see-through yoga pants on. She was a street performer and was contorting her body into all kinds of positions. This was in a big city street in the United States. The two guys who uploaded the video to YouTube were recording her with their camera. They happened to be laughing and making it obvious that they were not really taping her for her artistic athletic ability, but because they found her ass and crotch nice to look at. Then along came this aggressive woman to the rescue of the street performer. She started waving her hands in front of the camera and trying to push the guys out of the way. She started to draw as much attention to them as possible and yelled at them things like, "You have no right to stand here and bother this woman by recording her, and you are objectifying her." She got some other women in the crowd to nod their head in agreement with her and some men too. Wait a second here. This girl had the right to come out in a public street and wear offensive clothing, and yet the guys had no right to record her on a public street or even stare and laugh. It agrees with the mindset that says, "Don't you dare have any other reaction to my erotic clothing other than maybe begging me for a date, buying me lunch, or buying me drinks." This is a step farther than just having the right to not have the physical line crossed and to not get raped. This is girls doing whatever they want to do with rules of civilized moral conduct only applying to men. It is ingrained in young girls, which can only lead to the next generation being made up of a large percentage of divas with a sense of entitlement. For example, have you ever looked at kids with their parents in the shopping mall? Parents are ingraining the pattern in them at 8 years of age. There can't possibly be any difference between the comfort level of different types of clothes on the boys versus on the girls at that age. Before puberty, their bodies are almost the exact same shape. But the parents teach the girls, by choosing the super tight fit for their daughters and the loose clothes for their sons, that this is how girls are supposed to dress and that girls should continue this pattern as they get older. It doesn't hurt society when they are 8 and have no real shape, but they will learn the pattern and it will matter when they are 14 and older. What is hypocritical is that popular feminist bloggers, activists, and journalists usually complain that little girls are conditioned by society, parents, and the patriarchy to wear dresses and to like stereotypical girl toys. They say it is not in their genetic nature to choose these things. They may be right about the dresses, not sure about the toys though. However, why do they keep their evil mouths shut and stay deathly quiet about the social conditioning of little girls to dress in skin-tight clothes? This should be strongly suggesting to the analytically minded listener that there is likely something else controlling feminism from the top, which has a different agenda from making women's lives better. Something that, in spite of them correctly identifying many problems with feminism, Sargon of Akkad, Karen Strawn, Bane 666, and Razor Blade Candy will not touch. They will not actually go there to the who and the why behind the what. Check out my YouTube channel for these answers. It is not a coincidence that when feminists go against their own stated goals or principles, it is also when that contradiction will help make the world more sexually immoral. Some clothing stores sell thongs sized for 7 to 10-year-old girls with printed slogans such as eye candy or wink wink on them. So these very young girls are already being taught that their ass cheeks and other nearby areas are for guys to look at and drool over. Feminists, like Anita Sarkeesian, devote much time to attacking video games. What is insanely hypocritical is that they usually complain about the way the female characters are dressed in video games. They also complain that the games focus in on certain body parts of the female characters and they claim that these body parts are sexual body parts. Oh my god, where do I begin to discuss such an enormous example of missing the whole point and of giving ammunition to your ideological enemies? I have been trying to convince all women, who will give me the time to listen and stay calm while I speak, that women should cover up these very same body parts in public. When somebody like me makes this claim, feminists then claim that I am making women feel ashamed of their bodies and they protest that women should be allowed to do what they want with their own bodies and so on and so forth. But, if they claim in one scenario that there is nothing wrong with showing those body parts naked or under spray painted on, thinner than paper clothes, then how can they fairly say that the video game screen being focused exactly where any eyeball in public could be forced to focus is suddenly wrong and oppressive to women? The video game makers are only trying to make the games look realistic. Since women most often wear this type of clothing in most places, then the game makers need to include it in the games to make an accurate depiction of the immoral, promiscuous reality that, ironically, feminism has created. I cannot believe how backwards feminists' thinking is on this. Are they all retarded?